Hello, this is the video for Act 4, Scene 1 of Macbeth. Okay, so if you recall, the last act ended with Lennox and this lord talking about how Macduff is making plans to gather some sort of army to fight against the tyrant, which is what they now call Macbeth. Macbeth had planned to go see the witches, and that's where we are in Act 4, Scene 1. All right, it starts with the witches and thunder again, of course, and these are a bunch of spells and enchantments that the act opens with them trying to kind of conjure. All right. As they are preparing for Macbeth to come seek them out, because of course they know that's going to happen because they have more in them than mortal knowledge. So there's all this really fun kind of witch chanting. This is that different rhymes, different meter again, trochaic tetrameter that Shakespeare saved for witches. Okay, and this is supposed to be, I think, in a cavern in a cave, and they've got these cauldrons, and they're throwing in all this gross stuff to make some sort of potion that will make these visions appear later for Macbeth later in the scene. So they throw in poisoned entrails, toads, and all this gross stuff. Um, and this is one of the most famous lines in all of Shakespeare. This one right here: double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble. For some reason, that has become one of the most famous lines. You see it all the time. You'll hear it at some point, kind of parodied. And this vision of what witches are like is something that has lasted for a long time. They continue talking about what they're throwing into the cauldron, eye of newt, toe of frog, dog of tongue, all this stuff, leg of lizard. Okay, so you can have fun reading through that. All kinds of gross things here. What else? Root of hemlock, that's that poison root. Here you see some of the prejudices that existed in Shakespeare's time: liver of blaspheming Jew, and the nose of a Turk, and a Tartar's lips. These are all body parts of people that they thought were damned, because they weren't the kinds of Christian, weren't Christian. The finger of a birth strangled babe, really awful. And so all these things go into the cauldron. And again, they repeat the chant, double, double, toil and trouble. And this is some of the stuff, not that stuff, but this stuff is kind of what people like seeing and acting out on stage during performances of Macbeth. You have to cool it with a baboon's blood, and then the charm is firm and good. Just so you know, that's how you make this potion. All right, here's Hecate, that kind of goddess of the witches again. We don't really have to worry about her. Most people think that she was kind of inserted by a later poet. This is another really famous line. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. People believe that if you felt some sort of bodily sensation like that, it meant something bad was going to happen. So this means Macbeth, is showing up, of course. The second witch can tell it. And she has this great line, okay? Open locks whoever knocks. So he enters the cave, okay? Now, hopefully, as Macbeth enters, I want you to be thinking about how this Macbeth, the Macbeth who is seeking out the witches, how different he is from the Macbeth in Act 1, whom the witches interrupted on his way home from battle and presented him with that prophecy, which sparked all this stuff, right? Because when he was coming home from that battle, he was just a war hero going home. He's going to be praised and all that. They tell him he's going to be king, and that throws everything out of whack, right? So now here we have the witches again, and this is a very, very different Macbeth. I want you to see where you see evidence of how that is. All right. He addresses them and says, "How now, you secret black and midnight hags? What is it you do?" That's different. They can't tell him. All right. Now he says, "I conjure you by that which you profess, however you come to know it. Answer me." Different there too. "Though you untie the winds and let them fight against the churches, though the yeasty waves confound and swallow navigation up, though bladed corn be lodged and trees blown down, though castles topple on their wanderers' heads, though palaces and pyramids do slope their heads to their foundations, though the treasure of nature's Germans tumble all together, even till destruction sicken, answer me to what I ask you." Okay. And they respond, "Speak, demand, we'll answer." Okay. And the first witch asks, "Say if you'd rather hear it from our mouths or from our masters." Ooh. Okay. Who are their masters? Demons, spirits, devil things. Okay. So he says, "Call them." Let me see him. I love that line. He's like, yeah, I can handle it. Let me hear from your masters. Macbeth is like, just bring it all on, and don't need to kind of water it down for me. So they pour in some sow's blood. That whoa, okay, gross. Moving on into the potion. Now, in some performances, he has to drink the potion here. I don't think they actually say that here, but that makes it kind of make sense, right? Or they just pour in something and stir it so the thing pops up. But in the Ian McKellen version, he drinks it. We'll look at a couple different ones. So, very famous thing and very important thing that happens now is he's going to see three apparitions. All right, an apparition means a vision, like a ghost, some being that appears. Okay, a being that's not really there, kind of like a hallucination, but that shows up for him. So he's going to see three very interesting, full of apparitions, full of symbolism. The first one is an armed head, which means a severed head with a helmet on it. Well, this will all make sense at the end. We'll go back and figure out what these are about. Okay? So the floating head with a helmet pops up, and Macbeth tries to start talking to it and says, "Tell me, thou unknown power." And the first witch cuts him off and is like, "He knows thy thought. Hear his speech, but say thou not." What's that mean? Don't try to, she was like, "Hey, don't talk to him. He knows your thoughts without you having to speak. So just listen, okay?" Which is kind of a funny, to me, rebuke of Macbeth right there. And the floating head with the helmet says, "Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth, beware Macduff. Beware the Thane of Fife. Dismiss me. Enough." And then he kind of goes back down into the cauldron, I think. So that's cool. All right. So Macduff's title is the Thane of Fife. This is the Thane. The Thane. This is the same person. Macduff is the Thane of Fife. Okay. So there's his first apparition warning him about Macduff, which is something Macbeth really wanted to hear about. He's been wary of Macduff. He knows that he didn't come to the banquet, so he's saying, "Oh, whatever thou art, for thy good caution, thanks. Thou hast harped my fear aright." Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. But one word more. He tries to talk to him some more. And the first witch again is like, "Hey, he will not be commanded. You can't tell him what to do." But here's another more potent than the first. So a more powerful apparition is about to show up, and it's a bloody child. Ooh. All right. Again, we'll explain what that is by the very end. But let's hear what the second apparition says. "Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth." And Macbeth has this, I think this line's kind of funny. "Had I 3 years, I'd hear thee." Which I think just means, like, I'm listening. I would listen with all the ears I have. You're saying my name a lot. I don't know. That line kind of makes me chuckle. The second apparition says, "Be bloody, bold, and resolute. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth." Macbeth is going to be pretty happy about this, because what this says is he should continue to be bloody, bold, resolute, strong, resolved, laugh at anybody who tries to overthrow you, because no man who was ever born of a woman will ever harm Macbeth. That's his prophecy. Okay? So, interesting, right? Macbeth is like, "Okay, then go ahead and live, Macduff. What need I fear of thee?" Right? That makes sense? But now he wants to make double sure. "Thou shalt not live." Okay? "Thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale-hearted fear it lies and sleep in spite of thunder." So he still maybe has some evil plans, just to be safe. Here comes the third apparition, though, before he can really talk about that. And it is a child crown, so a child with a crown on his head, and holding a little tree in his hand. Again, all this symbolism we'll explain at the very end of the play. And Macbeth, now speaking, says, "What is this that rises like the issue of a king, and wears upon his baby brow the round and top of sovereignty," which is a crown. And all the witches are like, "Listen, but speak not to it." Again, he can't shut up, so they keep telling him, "Don't talk to it." The third apparition again tells him to be lion mettled, have the character, the mettle of a lion, be proud. Don't care about who conspires against you, because again, similar prophecy, Macbeth shall never be vanquished, will never be conquered, until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him. Birnam Wood was the name of a forest that was a few miles away from Macbeth's castle, and Macbeth's castle sat high on Dunsinane Hill. So what this is saying is no one will conquer you until the forest that's like 10 miles away from your castle moves up to the hill where your castle is. Sounds pretty good, right? And then that crowned kid with a tree in his hand, think about the symbolism there, descends back into the cauldron. And Macbeth is like, well, that will never be. Who can make the forest and bid the tree to unfix his earthbound root? Okay, sweet Bodemans, good. Rebellious dead, rise never till the wood of Burnham rise. And our high-placed Macbeth, again, he's using royal we, third person, I think talking about his castle high on that hill, shall live the lease of nature, pay his breath to time and mortal custom. Again, yet my heart throbs to know one thing. Tell me if your art can tell so much. Here's the thing that's really on Macbeth's mind, which is what? Take a look. He wants to know, are Banquo's kids gonna become king in his kingdom? Because that's what he really is driving him crazy, is that he doesn't have kids, but presumably he's still of an age where he can have kids. So he's probably planning to hopefully try to have some kids so that his line of kings can extend. So he really wants to know if Banquo's kids will ever reign in this kingdom, and they don't answer him. Seek to know no more. And look at Macbeth. Again, think how different he is. I will be satisfied. Deny me this, and an eternal curse fall on you. Let me know. He doesn't take no for an answer. He makes them try to tell him. All right, the cauldron now sinks down. The stages in the globe had a trapdoor. It would sink down into that trapdoor. Now how's that sinking? What noise is this? So the witches now, he's like, okay, you want to see? They say, show, show, show. Show his eyes and grieve his heart. Come like shadows, so depart. So now comes the last apparition. This is like a fourth. It's a big one, okay? And it's a line of 8 kings, okay? The 8th king is holding a magic glass, like a magic mirror in his hand. And behind him is Banquo. So you should be able to get what that symbolizes. It's an answer to his question. And he says, oh, you look like Banquo down. That crown sears my eyeballs, and your hair is like the first. If they all the same hair. Now he starts cursing the witches. You filthy hags, why'd you show me this? There's a 4th one? Oh no. It's going to stretch out forever till the end of the world. Another, a 7th? I can't look anymore. The 8th appears, and he's describing what is in the stage directions. He's bearing a glass, a mirror, which shows me many more. So in the mirror, they're just showing the line extending, extending, extending. Horrible sight. Now I see it's true. What's true? The blood-boltered Banquo smiles upon me and points at them for his. So there we get the answer to the question. Yeah, Banquo's kids are going to rule. And then I think I mentioned this before, but at the time that he wrote this play, Shakespeare, the King of England was James VI of Scotland, who was James I of England, who traced his lineage to the actual historical Banquo. So people thought that James, King of England, was a descendant of Banquo. So all of this is meant to be kind of a compliment to the king for, that he descends from this noble character of Banquo, and then he comes from this long line of respected kings. Okay, then they all disappear. All right, and the first witch, don't worry about this part. Some people think this part was added in later too, because it doesn't really make sense given everything else. So don't worry about it. That's the end of it. The witches dance around, and then they disappear. Okay, and he's like, where are they? Now Lennox comes in. Remember Lennox? He was the one at the end of that scene at the end of Act 3 who was being all sarcastic, right? And he says, what's your grace's will? So now we can assume that Lennox went with Macbeth, but was waiting outside the cave. This tells us something interesting about Macbeth and kind of his grasp of his followers. He thinks that Lennox is one of his loyal, trusted guys, one of his supporters. But we know that Lennox is cursing him behind his back and hoping for Macduff to be successful in this overthrow. So now we know that Macbeth doesn't even have a good sense of who's loyal to him and who's not. He asks Lennox, did you see those weird sisters? No, I didn't. They didn't come by you? No, indeed. Okay, infected be the air whereupon they ride. Okay, and, this is interesting. And damned all those that trust them. Damn everyone who trusts those witches. Who is he cursing? He's cursing himself. Because even though he saw that line of kings and everything, he still is going to trust in them. He did at first, and he's going to now with these things of, be bloody, bold, and resolute. No one of woman born is ever going to hurt you. No one's going to hurt you till the forest comes upon that hill. Okay, and then he says, I heard a horse. Who was that? And they said, 'tis 2 or 3, my lord, that bring you word. All right, there were some messengers that came to tell him this news right there. Okay, fled to England. Tough, yeah. Okay, so now he knows. Now this is a side. This is another really creepy speech soliloquy thing. And let's look at what we can learn about Macbeth from this. Time. Thou anticipatest my dread exploits. You anticipate what I want to do. The flighty purpose never is overtook unless the deed go with it. From this moment, what he is vowing here, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. What do you think that means? No more of that old Macbeth, right? No more thinking about things. If you have a feeling of something you want to do in your heart, you go ahead and do it. And even now, to crown my thoughts with acts, be it thought and done. So anytime I have a thought, I'm going to do it. And here's the horrible thing that he now decides he wants to do. The castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon Fife. That's his castle. Give to the edge of the sword. Yeah, read that. That's bad. His wife, his babes, all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. No boasting like a fool. This deed I'll do before the purpose cool. I'm going to do this before I cool down. But no more sights, but I can't handle any more of those visions. This is probably a low point, isn't it? You know, he already tried to he killed his best friend. He tried to kill his best friend's son, Fleance, but now he's wants to kill all these people. All right. It's kind of amazing. Just think about this. You know, we don't root for Macbeth obviously anymore. I hope you're not rooting for Macbeth anymore, because he's sunk to such an evil place now. Let's see how we can. You know, is it fun now to just root for his defeat? Are you rooting for a little bit of redemption of his character? Shakespeare kind of is going to try to do all these things for us through the rest of Act 4 and 5. All right, we'll stop it there, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.